Greetings, friends. If you are watching this video, it means you have already started or are planning to start your journey to financial independence. Last time we talked about the foundation, but today we will uncover perhaps the most insidious trap of the modern world. This is a mistake made not only by beginners, but also by people with very high incomes. It's a mistake that makes doctors, lawyers, top managers, and successful entrepreneurs run in a hamster wheel, not getting a single step closer to wealth despite millions passing through their hands. Today, we are analyzing error number 2, the illusion of wealth and a fundamental, catastrophic misunderstanding of the nature of assets and liabilities. We won't just give textbook definitions. We will analyze the psychology, the history of this illusion, the mathematics that banks hide from you, and reprogram your thinking so that you learn once and for all to distinguish what makes you rich from what just makes you appear so. Get ready, this will be a long and honest conversation. Let's start with a visualization. Imagine a person. Let's call him Andre. Andre drives a new black BMW, the latest model. Andre wears a Rolex Submariner watch. Andre lives in a luxury residential complex in the center of a metropolis, in an apartment with panoramic windows. Every weekend, Andre dines in restaurants where a salad costs as much as an ordinary family spends on food in a week. Looking at Andre, society, your neighbors, and perhaps even you yourself will say, Andre is rich. But what if I tell you that Andre is bankrupt? What if I tell you that Andre is one paycheck away from complete financial disaster? The problem is that we are used to judging a book by its cover and wealth by the attributes of consumption. We confuse income with capital, and, even worse, we confuse spending with success. This is the illusion of wealth. Modern culture, permeated by social media, has elevated this illusion to an absolute. Instagram and TikTok sell us an image of successful success that is 90% made up of liabilities, expensive cars, clothes, travel. And we, trying to conform to this image, make a fatal mistake. We start buying liabilities, sincerely believing that we are acquiring assets. To understand how we got to this point, we need to delve a little into history and psychology. The concept of wealth was not always associated with conspicuous consumption on such a scale. 100 or 200 years ago, a wealthy person was considered to be someone who owned land, factories, manufactories, means of production. Wealth was hidden in ledger books, not flaunted in the form of brand logos on t-shirts. However, in the 20th century, especially after World War II, the economic model changed. The world needed to rebuild, and consumption became the engine of the economy. Marketers and economists understood, for the economy to grow, people must buy not only what they need for survival, but also what they want. The concept of obsolescence, moral and physical, emerged. Credit appeared. Credit became more accessible than ever. And this is where the substitution of concepts occurred. Previously, to buy a house or a carriage, one had to accumulate capital. Now, you could get an item immediately, paying for it with future labor. This created a gap between reality and appearance. You can look like a millionaire today by stealing money from your future self. But let's get to the crux of the problem, to definitions. Why are most people confused? Because that's how we were taught. If you open a standard financial statement or talk to a bank employee, they will tell you that your house is an asset. Your car is an asset. Your furniture, your appliances, even your clothes, all of this is recorded in the assets column when calculating your net worth. From the perspective of classical accounting, this is correct because these things have some market value and can theoretically be sold. But from the perspective of financial literacy and wealth building, this definition is a lie. It's a dangerous lie that keeps millions of people in poverty. Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, proposed a revolutionary, simple, and the only correct definition for an investor. Forget about balance sheets. Look at the cash flow. The definition is this: an asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it, period. No nuances at this stage. If you have something and this something requires money from you for maintenance, taxes, repairs, insurance, and at the same time does not generate income, it's a liability, even if it costs $1 million. If you have something that brings you money every month without your active participation, it's an asset. This simple paradigm shift completely changes the worldview. Let's break this down with specific, painful examples that cause the most disagreement. The biggest deception of the middle class is the house or apartment you live in. Ask anyone on the street, is your apartment an asset? 99% will answer, of course, it's my main investment. Real estate always appreciates in value. Let's dissect this myth in detail using our cash flow definition. When you buy an apartment for personal residence, what happens to your money? First, you pay a down payment. Money left your pocket. Second, you take out a mortgage. Every month you pay the bank. Within this payment, there is the principal, debt, and interest. Interest is the cost of renting money. It leaves irrevocably. Third, you pay utilities. Fourth, property tax. Fifth, insurance. Sixth, repairs. And appreciation. Furniture breaks, pipes leak, wallpaper fades. All of this requires money. The apartment drains money from your pocket every single month. Therefore, your personal apartment is a liability. Many will now object, but wait, real estate is getting more expensive. I bought it for $5 million and in 10 years it will be worth $10 million. This is a classic argument based on speculation, not investing. Let's calculate honestly. If you bought an apartment with a 20-year mortgage, you will overpay the bank another 1 or 2 times the value of the apartment in interest. You will pay taxes and utilities all these 20 years. You will do at least 2 or 3 renovations. Taking into account inflation, which devalues money, the real increase in the value of your concrete box often turns out to be 0 or even negative. But the most important thing is not that. The most important thing is the opportunity cost, or lost profit. The money you buried in the down payment and monthly mortgage overpayments could have been working in real assets, stocks, bonds, or a business, bringing compound interest. By freezing money in the walls you live in, you deprive it of the opportunity to multiply. Don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for everyone to live on the street. Living in your own home is wonderful. It provides a sense of security, comfort, and stability. It's an important emotional need. But you must be honest with yourself. Buying a home for yourself is consumption. It's an expense. It's buying an expensive liability for comfort. It's not an investment. Once you stop considering your home your main asset, you will stop relying on it as a retirement plan and start looking for real assets. By the way, do you know for whom your home is an asset? For the bank. Because for the bank, your mortgage is what puts money in their pocket every month. You are a cash cow for the bank as long as you consider your liability an asset. The second greatest wealth devourer is the car. Here, the illusion is even more obvious, but for some reason, people keep making the same mistakes. A new car loses 10 to 20% of its value the second you drive it out of the dealership. This is perhaps the fastest loss of capital an ordinary person can make without playing at a casino. But loss of value is just the tip of the iceberg. A car requires fuel, maintenance, insurance, washing, parking, fines, tire replacement. It's a black hole for money. However, society has imposed on us the idea that a car is a status symbol. You are what you drive. Men, especially, are susceptible to this trap. We buy cars we can't afford to impress people we don't like. If you take out a car loan, you are committing double financial suicide. You pay interest to the bank for an asset that is rapidly depreciating. This is financial absurdity. Rich people buy expensive cars, but they buy them with income from their assets. The poor and middle class buy expensive cars with income from their labor, going into debt, and thereby depriving themselves of the opportunity to ever become rich. Remember, until your passive income covers the cost of your toys, any luxury is poison to your financial health. Let's dig deeper into psychology. Why do we do this? Why do we surround ourselves with liabilities? There is a concept called the Diderot effect. Denis Diderot, a French philosopher, once received a luxurious red robe as a gift. This robe was so magnificent that it made all the other furnishings in Diderot's study seem shabby in comparison. He replaced the old carpet with a new, expensive one. Then he changed the desk, the armchair, the paintings. In the end, he found himself in debt trying to bring his entire life into alignment with the level of one robe. This is the consumption trap. Buying one status liability leads to a chain of others. Bought an expensive apartment? You need an expensive renovation. You need expensive furniture. You need a car to match the parking in that building. You need to dress in a certain way so neighbors don't stare in the elevator. Liabilities tend to multiply and take over all the free space in your budget. Now let's talk about hidden liabilities, about things we don't even notice. Subscriptions, streaming services, apps, gym memberships you don't use. These are small piranhas nibbling at your budget. It seems like a trifle, 300 rubles here, 500 rubles there. But annually, it's thousands that could have been invested. Another hidden liability is technology, a new iPhone every year. Why? Functionally, it's little different from the previous one. But it's status. It's the feeling of novelty. It's a dopamine hit. We buy these things to fill a void, but the financial void only grows from it. Also, relationships can be a liability. Yes, it sounds cynical, but an environment that drags you down, makes you spend money on meaningless entertainment, alcohol, parties, that's a social liability. Financial literacy requires a harsh audit not only of your wallet, but also of your lifestyle. And now that we've dealt with the enemies, let's talk about friends. What are real assets, and why do they often seem boring and unattractive? A real asset is something that works when you sleep. It's something that doesn't require your constant presence to generate money. The first type of asset is a business, but not just any business. If you work in your business 24/7, and if you go on vacation and the business stops, that's not a business, that's self-employment. It's not an asset in the full sense of the word. An asset is a system. It's a business where processes and people work, bringing you profit. Creating such a system is the most difficult, but also the most profitable path. The second type is securities, stocks, bonds, funds. Many are afraid of the stock market, considering it a casino. But if you buy dividend aristocrat stocks or index funds, you are essentially buying small pieces of really working businesses. You become a co-owner of the economy. You sleep, and thousands of employees of Coca-Cola, Apple, or Sberbank work to create profit, a part of which will be shared with you. This is the magic of capitalism, accessible to anyone who has at least 1,000 rubles. The third type is income-generating real estate. Note the difference. Not the apartment you live in, but an apartment or commercial premises that you rent out. In this case, it's not you, but your tenant who pays the mortgage. The tenant pays utilities. And the difference between the rent and expenses settles in your pocket. That's when real estate becomes an asset. But even here, you need to know how to calculate, because a bad real estate investment can easily become a liability if it sits idle or requires constant repairs. The fourth type is intellectual property. Books, patents, copyrights, online courses, even this YouTube channel, if it's monetized. You create a product once and it brings you royalties for years. This is probably the most beautiful type of asset in the digital age. But why don't people buy assets? Why do they buy liabilities? The answer is simple. Assets don't have an instant wow effect. You can't boast about a brokerage account to your friends as impressively as a new car. Stocks are just lines of numbers on a phone screen. They are boring. They take time. Getting rich slowly is boring. Looking rich quickly is fun. But it is precisely the ability to endure this boredom and delay gratification that distinguishes future millionaires from eternal debtors. Warren Buffett drove an old car and lived in the same house for decades while his capital grew exponentially. He understood the difference between being and seeming. Another critically important aspect in understanding assets and liabilities is time. Time is the only irreplaceable resource. Liabilities often steal your time. A large house requires cleaning or managing staff who clean. An expensive car requires trips to the service center. A boat or a dacha requires constant attention. Assets, on the contrary, should buy you time. Dividends from stocks can pay for your cleaner, driver, or simply give you the opportunity not to go to a hated job. When you buy an asset, you buy a piece of your freedom in the future. When you buy a liability, you sell a piece of your freedom in the future because you will have to work to service that liability. Let's consider a mathematical model called net worth versus cash flow. Many people chase net worth. They say, I have assets worth $1 million. But if these assets are an expensive house, 2 cars, and a dacha, and all of it brings not a penny but only requires expenses, then this person is rich on paper but poor in reality. He has no liquidity. If he loses his job, he won't be able to eat his house. He will have to sell it, most likely at a discount, because the market may be in a downturn. True wealth is measured not by the sum of junk's value, but by the magnitude of cash flow. How much does your passive income exceed your expenses? If your expenses are 100,000 rubles a month and your assets bring you 110,000 rubles a month, you are rich. You are free, even if you take the subway. And if you earn 1,000,000 rubles a month through active labor, spend 1,000,000 on servicing liabilities, and have no passive income, you are poor. You are a slave to your lifestyle. Error number 2 also lies in the fact that people increase their expenses proportionally to their incomes. This is called lifestyle inflation or Parkinson's law. Expenses always rise to meet income. Got a raise? Bought a nicer car. Another raise? Moved to a more prestigious neighborhood. As a result, despite salary growth, the amount of money remaining to buy real assets remains zero. You are simply pumping more water through the pipe, but nothing remains in the reservoir. To break out of this cycle, you need to freeze your standard of living. When your income grows, the difference should not go to improving comfort, for now, but to buying assets. Only when assets start generating income can you use this excess income to buy liabilities. This is the golden rule. Buy luxury with income from assets, not from your salary. A very important nuance that is rarely discussed: the concept of asset and liability can be dynamic and depend on the context of use. For example, a car. If you are a taxi driver or a sales representative and the car helps you earn more money than you spend on it, it's a tool. It's part of an asset. If you buy a camera to shoot videos for a blog that brings in money, it's an asset. But if you buy the same camera to shoot cats for a family archive, it's a liability. The same thing can be both. The main criterion is the purpose and the result. Does money come in or go out? So how do you fix error number 2? How do you stop living in the illusion of wealth? The first step is, however banal, an audit. Take a piece of paper, divide it into 2 columns. On the left, write assets. On the right, liabilities. Be ruthless. Your phone is a liability. Your clothes are a liability. Your car is a liability. Your house is a liability, if you live in it. Now look at the assets column. What's there? A bank deposit? Stocks? An apartment for rent? A share in a friend's business? If this column is empty or negligibly small compared to the right one, you have problems. But admitting the problem is half the solution. The second step is to stop the bleeding. Stop buying liabilities. Announce a moratorium on large purchases that don't bring in money. Don't change your car if the old one still runs. Don't buy a new phone if the old one still makes calls. This will require willpower, because marketing will hit your pain points. They will tell you, you deserve this. Answer yourself, I deserve freedom, not a new loan. The third step is to focus on acquiring assets. Start small. No money for real estate? Start with stocks or bonds. No money for stocks? Start with education, an asset that increases your ability to earn. your human capital. But be careful. Education only becomes an asset if you apply the knowledge to earn money. A diploma on the shelf is a liability. You spent time and money getting it. The fourth step is a reevaluation of values. You need to learn to get dopamine not from spending, but from investing. This is difficult, but possible. When you see the first dividends coming in, even if it's 100 rubles, it's an incredible feeling. These are monies you didn't work for. These are your little workers who toil for you. Learn to love this process of capital growth more than the process of buying things. Love the numbers in your account more than the items in your closet. Let's touch on another deep layer, the influence of your environment. If all your friends only discuss cars, clothes, and renovations, it will be incredibly difficult for you to resist the consumption race. We are social animals. We copy the behavior of the pack. If your pack measures success by liabilities, you will do it too. You may have to change your environment, or at least find a community of like-minded people who discuss investments, business ideas, and financial independence, where the measure of success is not the brand of a watch, but the size of passive income and free time. It is also worth mentioning the role of the banking system in this illusion. Banks benefit from you being financially illiterate. The ideal bank client is a person with a good salary and a lot of debt from credit cards and a mortgage. Such a person won't go anywhere. They will work until old age, afraid of losing their job, and will diligently bring interest to the bank. Financial literacy is an act of rebellion against the system. When you understand the difference between an asset and a liability, you stop being a battery for the system and start using the system to your advantage. We must also talk about risks. Buying assets always involves risk. A business can go bankrupt, the stock market can fall, tenants can move out, and it is often the fear of losing money that stops people.
I'd rather buy a sofa. It's real, it's in the room, no one will take it away. But the paradox is that buying liabilities is a guaranteed loss of money through depreciation and expenses, while buying assets is a probabilistic income. By choosing the safety of a sofa, you choose guaranteed poverty. By choosing the risk of investments, you give yourself a chance at wealth. Risk can and should be managed through education and diversification, but it cannot be completely avoided, and there is no need to. Let's go back to our hero Andre, with whom we began. Imagine an alternative character. Let's call him Sergey. Sergey drives a 5-year-old Toyota, lives in an ordinary apartment in a residential area, and dresses simply. From the outside, he looks like an ordinary clerk. But Sergey has a stock portfolio, a share in a small business, and a garage he rents out. Sergey directs all his free cash flow to buying new assets. In 10 years, Andre will most likely still be working himself to the bone to pay for his expensive toys, or he will face bankruptcy at the first crisis. Sergey, on the other hand, will be able to quit his job in 10 years because his assets will cover his expenses. At some point, Sergey will be able to buy a Porsche and a house if he wants, but he will buy them with his surplus, without jeopardizing his financial security. Who among them is truly rich? The answer is obvious. The illusion of wealth is dangerous because it steals your future. Every ruble spent on a liability today is not just a ruble. It's a soldier you've killed. This soldier could have captured other prisoners for you, earned interest for the rest of your life. By killing your soldiers for momentary pleasures, you are left without an army in the face of old age, inflation, and crises. I want you to remember one phrase: rich people build assets. The poor and middle class build liabilities that they consider assets. The difference is not in the amount of earnings, but in the vector of money movement. Assets direct money to you. Liabilities direct money away from you. In conclusion of this extensive topic, I want to urge you to be mindful. Next time your hand reaches for a credit card, or when you scroll through a car dealership's feed, ask yourself, Will this make me richer, or will it just make me appear richer? Be honest. Choose to be, not to seem. This path is not for everyone. It's a path of discipline, patience, and continuous learning. But the reward on this path is not just a pile of money. The reward is freedom. Freedom to live as you want, where you want, and with whom you want, without looking at price tags and without fearing tomorrow. Don't let marketing and public opinion dictate what success is to you. Success is a positive balance on your personal profit and loss statement. Success is when your assets work harder than you do. With that, we conclude the analysis of error number 2. Digest this information. You might want to listen to this video again to delve into the details. Don't be afraid to admit your mistakes. We've all made them. The main thing is to start correcting them today. In the next videos, we will continue to analyze fatal financial mistakes and build your road to capital. Thank you for your time, the most valuable asset you have. Invest it wisely. See you soon. See you soon.